We're on the record in cause number 327924, the state of Texas versus James Donald Herring. Mr. Herring, would you please, hold on a minute. Let's go back off the record. Okay, we're back on the record in cause number 327924, the state of Texas versus James Donald Herring. Mr. Herring, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Herring, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may put your hand down, Mr. Herring. How you doing, Mr. Herring?
Good.
You're doing great. That's good. Mr. Herring, I have before me an information that alleges that on or about September 8th of 2020, while you were in Jefferson County, Texas, operating a motor vehicle in a public place, that you committed the Class B misdemeanor offense of driving while intoxicated. Mr. Herring, do you understand what you've been charged with?
Yes, sir.
And to this charge, Mr. Herring, how do you plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
Guilty.
Now, are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? Are you pleading guilty because you're guilty?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Herring, I have before me what has been marked as State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
On page 2 of this same document, Mr. Herring, are these your initials?
Yes, sir.
On page 3 of this document, Mr. Herring, is this your signature above the line that says defendant?
Yes, sir.
I have another document. This document is titled the Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of Appeal. Mr. Herring, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And is this your signature on this document?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Herring, I have 2 other documents. This first document is titled the Judge's Explanation of Rights to Defendants Without Attorney. Mr. Herring, are these your initials on the line that says, I want to waive my right to an attorney and represent myself?
Yes, sir.
And is that your signature on the line that says defendant?
Yes, sir.
I also have a document that is titled Waiver of Counsel for Purposes of Entering a Guilty Plea or Proceeding to Trial. Mr. Herring, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And is this your signature on the line that says defendant?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Herring, prior to signing and initialing these documents, did you have an opportunity to review the documents?
Yes, sir.
And did you review the documents?
Yes, sir.
And did you understand what you reviewed?
Yes, sir.
And is everything in these documents true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Herring, I have before me State's Exhibit number 1. State, you like to offer State's Exhibit number 1?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Herring, I have before me State's Exhibit number 1. State's Exhibit number 1 is the document that have your initials on page 2 and your signature on page 3. The state would like to use this document as evidence against you in this case. Is it all right for the state to use this document as evidence in your case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No objection. State's Exhibit number 1 will be admitted. Mr. Herring, is there any evidence that you are currently mentally incompetent to stand trial?
No.
Mr. Herring, I will accept your plea of guilty I will find that you are mentally competent to stand trial. I will also find that you plead guilty and waivers were freely and voluntarily given. I will also find that there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. State, do we have a plea bargain agreement?
Yes, Your Honor. It's for 16 days, credit for time served, tax and retire the court cost.
Okay, Mr. Herring, the state is offering that you serve 16 days in the Jefferson County Jail. However, you've already served 16 days in the Jefferson County Jail, and therefore you'll be given credit for the time that you've already served. If you owe any court costs, you will not have to pay the court costs because the time that you spent in jail has already paid it off. Therefore, the court costs will be taxed and retired. Mr. Herring, do you understand the state's offer?
I believe so.
And do you accept the state's offer?
Yes,
And do you think that the state's offer in your case is fair and just?
yes.
Okay, Mr. Herring, I will follow the plea bargain agreement that you have entered into with the state. Mr. Herring, would you please stand on the X right here in front of the clerk? And she'll have to give you some paperwork. Mr. Herring, have a good day. You're free to go.